Story time. Someone was living inside the abandoned house. I've always enjoyed exploring abandoned places. There was something fascinating about stepping into a building that the rest of the world had forgotten. Old factories, empty schools, abandoned houses. Most of the time, these places were exactly what they appeared to be: empty, silent, harmless. But one abandoned house completely changed the way I look at urban exploration. This happened in late autumn 3 years ago. My friend Ryan and I had spent months exploring abandoned locations around our area. We weren't reckless.
We never broke into occupied properties. We avoided dangerous structures, and we always left before dark. At least, that was usually the plan. One afternoon, Ryan told me about an abandoned house sitting several miles outside town. The property had once belonged to a family that disappeared from the area decades earlier. Nobody seemed to know exactly what happened to them. Some people claimed they moved away. Others believed something darker had happened. As usual, rumors had turned the place into a local legend. Naturally, we wanted to see it ourselves.
The house sat at the end of a narrow dirt road, surrounded by dense woods. Even finding it was difficult. The trees nearly concealed the entire structure. When we finally spotted it through the branches, I immediately understood why nobody visited anymore. The house looked enormous, far larger than I expected. 2 stories, a wraparound porch, broken windows, faded paint peeling from every wall. The entire structure looked as though it was slowly sinking into the earth. The silence around the property felt unnatural. No birds, no insects, nothing. Only the sound of wind moving through dead branches. Ryan joked that it looked like the perfect setting for a true horror story. At the time, I laughed. I wasn't laughing later. We approached carefully. The front door stood slightly open. That immediately caught my attention. Most abandoned houses are sealed shut by weather, debris, or time. This one wasn't. The door looked recently moved. Ryan pushed it open. The hinges groaned loudly. The sound echoed throughout the house. Inside, everything appeared untouched. Dust covered the furniture. Cobwebs filled corners of every room. Sunlight filtered through broken windows. At first glance, the place looked completely abandoned. But something felt wrong. I couldn't explain why. There was simply a feeling that we weren't alone. We began exploring room by room. The kitchen still contained dishes. The living room still contained furniture. Photographs covered the walls. Many had faded beyond recognition. The deeper we explored, the stranger things became. In one bedroom, I noticed something unusual. The dust near the doorway had been disturbed. Not everywhere. Only in certain spots, as if somebody regularly walked through the room. I pointed it out to Ryan. He noticed it immediately. Fresh footprints. Not many, just enough to make us uncomfortable. We convinced ourselves another explorer had visited recently. That explanation seemed reasonable. Then we found the food. Inside a cabinet near the kitchen sat several cans. Not old cans, new ones. The labels looked recent. Someone had placed them there. The discovery changed everything. Suddenly, this wasn't just an abandoned house. Someone had been using it. Maybe recently.
Maybe still. Ryan suggested leaving. I considered it, but curiosity won. We continued exploring. The second floor felt darker. The hallway stretched farther than expected. Several doors remained closed. One of them was locked. That immediately caught our attention. An abandoned house with a locked room. Of course, we wanted to know what was inside. We spent several minutes examining the door. It looked newer than the rest of the house. Someone had reinforced it from the outside. Eventually, we gave up. There was no easy way inside.
As we turned away, we heard a noise downstairs. a loud thump. Both of us froze. The sound had come from somewhere near the kitchen. Neither of us moved. A few seconds passed. Then another sound. This time it was unmistakable. Footsteps. Slow footsteps. Walking across the first floor. Someone was inside the house. Ryan looked at me. I looked at him. Neither of us spoke. The footsteps continued. Slow. Heavy. Deliberate. Whoever it was seemed completely unhurried, as if they knew exactly where they were going, and exactly where we were. We quietly moved toward the staircase. Every instinct told us to leave. But before reaching the stairs, I noticed something else. A notebook lying on the floor near the locked room. I picked it up. The first several pages were empty. Then I found writing. Recent writing. The entries described someone living inside the house, not visiting, living. The writer mentioned hiding from people, avoiding roads, watching strangers approach the property. Several entries described explorers entering the house, people exactly like us. One sentence stood out. I watch them from upstairs until they leave. My stomach tightened. The final entry had been written only days earlier. Then we heard footsteps again. Much closer this time. Coming up the stairs. We didn't wait. We ran. Down the hallway. Past several rooms, searching desperately for another exit. The footsteps kept climbing. Slow. Steady. Never speeding up. That somehow made it worse. Whoever was coming upstairs wasn't chasing us. They already knew we had nowhere to go. Ryan found a window overlooking the backyard. Without hesitation, he forced it open. Cold air rushed inside. We climbed through and dropped into the overgrown grass below. The fall hurt, but adrenaline kept us moving. We sprinted toward the tree line. Neither of us looked back until we reached the woods. Then Ryan stopped. His face had gone pale. He pointed toward the second floor. Someone stood at one of the windows, watching us. The figure remained completely still. No wave, no movement, just watching. Even from that distance, I could tell they had been there the entire time, observing, waiting, making sure we left. We never returned to the abandoned house. Months later, local authorities investigated the property after receiving reports of trespassers. They discovered signs that someone had indeed been living there. Blankets, food, personal belongings, evidence of long-term occupation. But they never found the person responsible. No identification, no name, no explanation. Only proof that someone had spent years hiding inside a house everyone believed was empty. To this day, I still think about that notebook. Because the truly disturbing part wasn't discovering that someone was living inside the abandoned house. It was realizing that the writer knew exactly who we were and had probably been watching us from the moment we arrived. Story 2, The Forest Trail That Doesn't Exist. This true horror story happened during a camping trip that I still regret taking. I've always loved the outdoors. Camping, hiking, exploring remote places far away from cities. A few years ago, 2 friends and I planned a weekend camping trip deep inside a national forest. The area was well known among hikers. Dozens of marked trails, beautiful scenery, almost no cell service. Exactly what we wanted. The first day went perfectly. We arrived in the afternoon, set up camp, collected firewood, spent hours exploring nearby trails. Nothing unusual happened. Nothing that suggested the trip would turn into one of the most disturbing experiences of my life. As darkness fell, the forest became incredibly quiet. Not silent, just different. The sounds seemed farther away, muted, as if the trees absorbed everything. We sat around the campfire sharing scary stories until nearly midnight. Eventually, one by one, everyone went to sleep. I woke sometime around 2 a.m. At first, I didn't know why. Then I heard it. A whistle. One long whistle. Somewhere in the distance. I assumed it was another camper. The forest was large, but not empty. I rolled over and tried to go back to sleep. A few seconds later, another whistle answered. This one came from a completely different direction. Then another, and another. The whistles seemed to be communicating, moving through the woods. I sat up immediately. My friend Jake was awake too. He heard them. So did Eric. None of us spoke. We simply listened. The whistles continued for nearly 10 minutes. Then, suddenly stopped. The silence afterward felt even worse. The next morning, we convinced ourselves it had been other campers.
It was the only explanation that made sense. After breakfast, we decided to explore deeper into the forest. Several miles from camp, we discovered something strange. A narrow trail. The problem was that it didn't appear on any map. We checked multiple times. Nothing. No marker, no sign, no indication the trail officially existed. Curiosity won. We followed it. The path wound between dense trees. Unlike the other hiking trails, this one looked maintained. Branches had been cut away, obstacles removed, leaves pushed aside. Someone used this trail regularly.
After nearly 40 minutes of walking, we found something unexpected. A cabin, hidden among the trees. The structure looked old, very old. Weathered wood, broken windows, a rusted chimney. Yet something about it seemed wrong. The area around the cabin was clean, too clean. No fallen branches, no overgrown plants. Someone had been maintaining the property. We approached cautiously. The front door stood slightly open. That alone should have convinced us to leave. Instead, we entered. Inside, we discovered signs of recent activity. Fresh firewood, food supplies,
Clean water containers, a lantern, blankets. Someone was living there. Not years ago. Now. The discovery made us uncomfortable. But what truly frightened us came next. On a table near the center of the cabin sat a notebook. Several pages contained dates. Recent dates. The entries described strangers entering the forest. Campers, hikers, explorers. The writer carefully documented where they went, what they did, when they left. One entry caught my attention immediately. 3 campers near the northern ridge arrived yesterday, set up camp beside creek. That was us. The notebook was describing us. My hands started shaking. Someone had been watching our campsite. Someone knew we were there. Then we heard a whistle outside. The exact whistle we had heard during the night. Every hair on my arms stood up. The whistle came again, closer. Then another answered from deeper in the woods. Then another. The same pattern, the same communication. Except this time, we knew it wasn't random. Someone was out there. Several people. And they knew exactly where we were. We immediately decided to leave. The moment we stepped outside, the forest felt different.
The trees seemed darker, the shadows deeper. The whistles continued, moving, changing position, circling. At one point, I became certain someone was following us through the woods. Not attacking, not approaching, just keeping pace. Watching. The trail back felt much longer than before. Every few minutes we'd hear another whistle, always somewhere nearby, never close enough to identify. Eventually, we reached our campsite. We packed everything. No discussion, no debate. We left immediately. The drive home was silent.
Nobody wanted to talk about what happened. A week later, curiosity got the better of me. I returned to the area with another group. I wanted answers. I wanted proof. Most importantly, I wanted to find the cabin again. But something strange happened. The trail was gone. Completely gone. We searched for hours. Nothing. No path, no cabin, no clearing. No sign that anything had ever existed there. It was as if the entire place had vanished. To this day, I still can't explain it. Maybe we somehow got lost. Maybe we wandered somewhere we weren't supposed to be.
Maybe the people behind those whistles didn't want to be found again. All I know is this. Somewhere in that forest, someone was watching us, and they knew exactly where we were every second we were there. Story 3. The Man on the Fourth Floor. For nearly 2 years, I worked the night shift as a security guard inside a large office building. The job was boring. Most nights consisted of staring at security cameras, drinking coffee, and waiting for sunrise. The building itself wasn't particularly interesting. 6 floors, several office suites, a small warehouse area. Nothing unusual. Or at least, that's what I thought during my first few months. Everything changed after the 4th floor was permanently closed. A plumbing disaster caused major structural damage. Several offices were flooded. Management relocated the employees and locked the entire floor. Nobody was supposed to go up there. Not employees, not maintenance workers. Nobody. For over a year, the 4th floor remained empty. Then strange things started happening. The first incident seemed insignificant. One of the motion sensors activated at exactly 2:03 a.m. I checked the cameras. Nothing. No movement. No people. No explanation. I assumed it was a malfunction. Old buildings have problems. False alarms happen. The next night, the same thing happened. 2:03 a.m. Same sensor. Same hallway. Again, nobody appeared on camera. By the end of the week, the sensor had activated every single night. Always at the exact same time. Always in the same location. Management called a technician. The system was inspected. Everything worked perfectly. No faults, no damaged wiring, no technical explanation. A few days later, things became stranger. One night, the sensor activated as usual. When I checked the monitor, I noted something unusual. A figure, standing at the far end of the hallway. The image quality wasn't great. The lighting was poor. But there was definitely someone there. A man, standing completely still, facing the camera, not moving, not walking, just standing. I immediately contacted another guard working outside. Neither of us was supposed to investigate alone. By the time we reached the 4th floor, the hallway was empty. No doors had opened, no windows were broken. Nobody was there.
We searched every room. Nothing. The figure had disappeared. The next night, it happened again. 2:03 a.m. Same hallway. Same figure. Same position. Standing motionless. Watching the camera. This time, I stayed in the security office. I wanted to see what happened. For nearly 10 minutes, the figure didn't move. Then suddenly, the camera feed flickered. For less than a second. When the image returned, the hallway was empty. The man was gone. No walking, no running, no visible exit. Just gone. By this point, I was genuinely unsettled.
Several coworkers became aware of the situation. Most laughed it off. Some believed it was a prank. Others blamed faulty equipment. I tried convincing myself they were right. Then came the recordings. One evening, I decided to review older footage. I wanted to know when the figure first appeared. The answer disturbed me. Much earlier than anyone realized. Weeks earlier, possibly months. The figure had been appearing regularly, always around the same time, always on the 4th floor, always standing in different hallways, watching. The strangest part was that nobody noticed because the appearances were brief. A few seconds, sometimes less, easy to miss. The more footage I reviewed, the more uncomfortable I became. Then I discovered something even worse. The figure wasn't getting closer to the cameras. The cameras were getting closer to the figure. Every appearance showed him slightly nearer than before, as if he was slowly moving through the building. One hallway at a time, one camera at a time, approaching. That realization stayed with me for weeks. Every night I found myself watching the monitors, waiting. At exactly 2:03 a.m., the motion sensor activated again. This time, the figure appeared directly outside an office door, closer than ever before. His face remained hidden by shadows, but I could clearly see his outline. Tall, thin, motionless. Then something happened that had never happened before. The figure turned, slowly, deliberately, and looked directly into the camera. Not toward it, into it. As if he knew I was watching. A cold sensation ran through my body. The camera feed immediately cut out. Black screen. Several seconds later, it returned. The hallway was empty. The following morning, I reported everything to management. To my surprise, they didn't seem shocked. In fact, they seemed uncomfortable, as though they already knew something. Eventually, one of the older maintenance workers pulled me aside. He asked me to describe the figure. When I finished, his expression changed completely. He looked pale, nervous, almost frightened. Then, he told me a story. Years before I started working there, a maintenance employee had disappeared inside the building. No explanation, no witnesses, no evidence. One day, he simply vanished. Police investigated. Nothing was found. The case eventually went cold. Then, the maintenance worker showed me an old employee photograph. The moment I saw it, my stomach dropped. The man in the picture looked exactly like the figure on the cameras. Same height, same build, same face. The photograph had been taken over 20 years earlier. I didn't know what to believe. Part of me wanted a rational explanation. Another part of me knew what I had seen. Several nights later, I experienced something I still can't explain. Around 2 a.m., I was sitting alone in the security office. Everything seemed normal. Then my radio crackled. At first, I assumed another guard was calling. Instead, I heard breathing. Slow, steady breathing. Nothing else. Then a voice. Quiet, barely audible. 4th floor. The transmission ended. I immediately checked the cameras. The figure was there, standing directly outside the stairwell, closer than he had ever been. For reasons I still don't understand, I decided to investigate. Maybe curiosity, maybe stupidity. I took the elevator to the 4th floor. The doors opened. The hallway was empty. No figure. No movement. Nothing. I began walking toward the area where the camera had shown him. Every sound echoed. Every step felt louder than normal. Halfway down the hallway, my radio crackled again. The same voice spoke. Only 4 words. "He's behind you." I froze. Every muscle in my body locked. Slowly, I turned around. The hallway behind me was empty. But something felt wrong. I couldn't shake the feeling that someone had been standing there seconds earlier. Watching. Waiting. I returned to the elevator immediately. The moment the doors closed, I felt relief. When I reached the security office, every 4th floor camera feed had gone black. All of them, at the same time. The outage lasted nearly 20 minutes. When the cameras returned, the figure never appeared again. Not that night, not the next night, not ever. The motion sensor stopped activating. The sightings ended. Everything returned to normal. 2 weeks later, I resigned. Some coworkers still think the entire thing was equipment failure. Others believe someone was secretly entering the building. Maybe they're right. Maybe there's a perfectly logical explanation. But I still remember that photograph. I still remember the voice on the radio. And I still remember the feeling of standing alone on the 4th floor, knowing something was there. Something that had been watching long before I arrived, and perhaps long after I left. Not every disturbing true horror story has a happy ending. Sometimes the only ending you get is leaving and never looking back.